The prairie stretched wide, flat as a hammered sheet of iron, the horizon blurred with dust and fading light. The ranch sat alone on the edge of that endless silence, a tired house of timber and stone. Wind pushed at the loose boards. A weather vane creaked. Nothing else moved. Elias Carson lived here, alone. The man had not spoken more than a handful of words in months. His voice, when forced, rasped like dry rope. He worked from dawn until the moon lifted itself pale over the hills, repairing fences, hauling water, branding calves no one would buy. His hands were raw and nicked, his back stiff from years of this routine. He did not complain. There was no one to complain to. The townsfolk called him stubborn, cursed, or simply forgotten. He did not argue. His land was all he had left after war, and loss had stripped him bare. He filled his days with labor and let the nights swallow him whole. That was enough, or so he believed. It was near dusk when he first saw her. A lone figure, stumbling along the dirt road that cut toward his ranch. At first Elias thought it was a boy, thin and hunched, clothes torn and coated with dust. But as she drew closer, he saw the truth. A woman, young still, though worn near to breaking. Her dress was ripped at the hem, her hair tangled in strands that stuck to her cheeks. She carried nothing but herself, and even that seemed almost too heavy. Elias leaned on the fence rail, squinting through the dry wind. The woman faltered, knees buckling once, twice, until she collapsed against the ditch. She lay there, breathing hard, as though each breath might be her last. For a moment, Elias stayed where he was. His first thought was to turn away, to let the road keep what it had claimed. He had no space in his life for strangers, no words left to give. But something in the way her shoulders shook made him move. Slow steps carried him across the dirt. He crouched beside her. Her lips trembled as though forming words, though none came. Dust clung to her skin, sweat tracing pale lines down her neck. She tried to sit up, failed, then whispered hoarsely, "Don't tell anyone, please." Elias frowned. The plea was cracked, desperate. He did not answer. His hands, rough and scarred, slid under her arms to lift her. She startled, weak but fierce, clutching the front of her torn dress as though to shield herself. The fear in her eyes was raw, animal. Elias stopped, his grip steady but not cruel. "You'll fall if you fight me," he muttered, voice low, rasping. Her chest heaved. She did not fight further. She allowed him to lift her to her feet. Her weight sagged against him, and for the first time in years, Elias felt the warmth of another human pressed close. It unnerved him. Still, he half carried her to the house. Inside, the dim light of a lantern flickered across bare walls. The woman sat at his table, bent over, clutching at her skirts. Elias poured water from a jug into a tin cup, placed it before her. She drank greedily, choking once, then holding the cup tight in both hands as if it might vanish. She would not meet his eyes. Only when her breathing slowed did Elias ask, "What's her name?" Silence. "Don't matter," he said finally, pulling a chair back. He sat, arms crossed. He had no appetite for games, but something in her haunted face held him there. She spoke at last, barely audible. "Clara." The name hung between them. Elias nodded once, then let the silence settle heavy again. Outside, the wind pressed against the house, whispering through the cracks. Clara lowered her head, voice breaking. "Don't tell them I'm here. Don't, please." Elias studied her. Her hands were trembling, clutching at fabric near her knees. He followed her gaze downward, noticing the way she pressed her skirts tight, as though hiding something beneath. His stomach turned cold, though he asked nothing. Not yet. Instead, he rose, moved to stoke the fire. His hands worked steady, though his chest ached with questions. Whoever she was, whatever she carried, it had chased her here, and now it had found him too. The house filled with the smell of burning cedar. Clara leaned closer to the warmth, shoulders sagging. She looked like someone who had not known safety in years, and even here, she did not believe it could last. Elias knew that look well. He had worn it himself for far too long. He said nothing more, and yet, in the silence, something fragile had begun. Eli didn't invite them in that first night. He just stood at the doorway, silent as the land itself, watching the three figures by his fence. The girls didn't speak much either. Their eyes were dark with both fear and fire, their bodies too thin, their hands clutched tight to each other, as if they had survived something unspeakable. The oldest one, maybe 17, finally stepped forward. Her words were broken, stitched together from bits of English she must have learned somewhere along the way. Please. Water. Safe. Eli's jaw tightened. For years he had kept the world away, and now the world stood right in front of him. He almost closed the door, almost turned back to his silence. But the memory of his daughter's small hand resting in his own, a memory that still woke him in the night, made him hesitate. Without a word, he motioned them toward the well. The girls drank deeply, their shoulders trembling as if the cold water carried away more than thirst. When they finished, they looked at him, waiting. Eli kept his distance. He pointed to the barn, left the door open, and returned to his house. That was all the welcome he could manage. Through the cracks of the night, he could hear them moving inside the barn. The sound of straw shifting, whispers in a tongue he didn't know, the muffled cry of the youngest one. He sat at his table with a lantern burning low, staring at the flame until his eyes stung. Sleep never came. By morning, the barn smelled of smoke, not fire, but wood burning gently. He found them crouched by a small fire pit they had made out of stones. The oldest girl stood quickly, ready to defend the other two. But Eli just tossed them a loaf of bread and walked back to the corral. For the first time in years, his ranch was no longer silent. The land had changed the moment those girls stepped onto it. Days passed, and the three Apache girls stayed. Eli never told them to leave, but he never asked them to stay either. They worked quietly around the barn, mending what they could, gathering wood, carrying water. The youngest, no more than 12, followed Eli at a distance when he fed the horses. She never spoke, but her eyes were steady, studying every move. The oldest girl kept the others close like a shield. Her dark hair hung uneven, as if it had been cut in haste. Her dress, torn and patched, was still the same deep blue from the night they arrived. Every thread on her seemed worn by dust, by running, by too many nights without safety. Eli carried on with his routines, his silence heavier than words. But in small ways, he noticed things. The girls rose with the dawn like he did. They didn't complain when the work was hard. They ate little, leaving more than they took, as if afraid of owing him too much. One evening, as the sun sank into the plains, Eli was splitting logs. The sound of the axe thudding into wood echoed across the yard. The middle girl approached slowly, holding a tin cup. She offered it without speaking, cool water from the well. For a long moment, Eli didn't move. Her hand trembled as she waited. Finally, he set the axe aside and took the cup. The water tasted of dust and iron, but it was the first kindness he'd accepted in years. He nodded once. That was enough. That night, while Eli sat on his porch, the oldest girl came forward. Her English was rough, halting, but her eyes never left his. You, help us. We work. No trouble. Eli didn't answer. He only looked out at the horizon, where the last light burned red against the mountains. But inside him, something shifted. He remembered when his wife was alive, how she had taken a stray dog once, broken and thin. He had been angry then, said they didn't need more mouths to feed. But she had only smiled, saying, sometimes broken things save us more than we save them. The memory pressed on him now. The girls weren't dogs, weren't strays. They were human, carrying scars too deep for him to understand. And somehow, the silence of his ranch didn't feel like his anymore. The next morning, Eli left extra bread on the porch before he rode out to check his fence line. When he came back, it was gone. Nothing was said, but a thread had been tied between them. Autumn rolled across the land, stripping the cottonwoods bare. The ranch grew quieter with each passing day, but inside that silence something lived now, the rhythm of work shared between Eli and the girls. They mended fences together, though Eli never asked. The oldest stitched old cloth into sacks. The middle girl carried water, her thin arms steady no matter how heavy the bucket. The youngest trailed Eli like a shadow, still wordless, but always near. One evening, as Eli sat sharpening his knife by lantern light, the oldest spoke again. Her voice was flat, cautious. "Men, look for us." Eli's hand paused on the blade. He lifted his eyes, but said nothing. "They trade girls," she added, the words catching in her throat. She didn't explain more. She didn't need to. Her bruises, their ragged clothes, the way they had come that night, it told enough. Eli set the knife down. The lantern hissed softly, the flame flickering. The girl's eyes were on him, waiting for judgment. At last he spoke. His voice was gravel. "You safe here." It was the first full sentence he had given them. The words hung in the air like a vow. The days that followed carried new tension. Eli began checking the horizon more often, his rifle never far from reach. He rode the fence lines longer, scanning for dust clouds that might mean riders. The girls noticed. They moved quicker, quieter. One morning, while tending the corral, Eli found fresh tracks near the creek. Boots, not moccasins, not his. They led toward the ridge, then vanished into the rocks. That night he oiled his Winchester, set it across his knees, and waited on the porch. The girls slept inside, their breaths shallow, uneven. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of smoke from far-off camps. Coyotes howled. Every sound felt sharper, closer. The youngest girl crept out at dawn, barefoot, her eyes wide. She pointed to the rifle, then to herself. Eli shook his head slowly. No. But in her gaze he saw the truth. They had lived hunted before. They knew what it meant. For the first time in 12 years, Eli felt the weight of others' lives pressing on his choices. The ranch wasn't just his anymore. If the men came, he would have to fight. As the sun rose, bleeding orange over the horizon, Eli stood. He looked at the three girls gathered in the doorway, their faces pale but unbroken. His jaw tightened. "They come," he muttered. "We end it here." The girls nodded. No fear left in their eyes, just the same quiet resolve that had carried them this far. The day they came, the sky was heavy with storm. Dark clouds dragged across the ridges, pressing the land down with their weight. Eli saw the riders first. 6 of them, climbing the trail slow, like men, certain no one could oppose them. Their laughter carried faint across the wind. He stood at the gate, rifle steady. Behind him, the girls waited in the shadows of the porch, silent as stone. The men dismounted, boots sinking into the dirt. The leader spat, his eyes sliding over Eli with disdain. "Got something belongs to us," he drawled. 3 somethings. Eli said nothing. The rifle didn't move. The leader chuckled. "Don't make it hard, old man. Hand him over, and maybe you keep your skin." From behind, the youngest girl stepped forward. Her small voice broke the silence. "We not theirs." The men laughed. Ugly sharp. The leader sneered. "See? They don't know better. We'll teach him." That was when Eli raised the rifle. The shot cracked the still air, echoing off the hills. The leader fell before he could reach for his pistol. The others scrambled, curses spilling, guns half drawn. But Eli had waited 12 long years with nothing but time to sharpen his aim. Each shot was deliberate, patient. 2 men dropped by the corral, another near the fence line. The last pair broke, running for their horses. Eli lowered the rifle, let them ride. The storm would chase them harder than he ever could. Silence returned, thick and trembling. The girls stared at him, eyes wide, not in fear but something deeper. Recognition. He hadn't just promised safety. He had claimed them, fought for them. Eli walked back to the porch, his steps slow, heavy. He set the rifle aside and sat, shoulders sagging with the weight of it all. The oldest girl spoke, her voice steadier now. "They won't stop easy." Eli nodded. "Then we don't stop either." For the first time, his lips tugged at something close to a smile. Small, tired but real. The middle girl brought water, setting the tin cup in his calloused hands. The youngest leaned against his knee, her silence warm, trusting. Thunder rolled across the valley, but the ranch no longer fell hollow. Inside the storm, a new life had begun. Eli had lived alone 12 years, his heart locked behind grief and dust. Now, with 3 fragile souls beside him, the lock was broken. Not with words, not with promises, but with action, with blood, with the choice to stand. The storm broke then, rain hammering the roof, washing the dirt clean. Eli closed his eyes, let soak into him. For the first time in years, he wasn't waiting for life to pass. He was living it. And though no one said it aloud, the truth settled between them. The ranch was no longer just his. It was theirs,